gaming laptop. Now, the tricky part about all of this is that really realistic pricing does vary quite a bit, and that when I initially set out to do this video, both the desktop and the laptop were priced very competitively, right around $1,500. But since both of the products have gone on sale a little bit, so they're actually a little bit less than $1,500, between $1,400 and $1,500 for both of them. Basically, I think the laptop was actually on sale down to about like $13.99 or something like that. It varied depending on the sale. But right now, the laptop is currently sold out at that sale price. But the desktop also is on sale, and there is a coupon code as well for this desktop from LYTE Gaming. They did a coupon code for my viewers. It's going to be GizmoSlip is the coupon code. It does give you $50 off of the desktop purchase. Now, this is not a sponsored review. LYTE Technology does not get to preview this or tell me what to say at all. This is going to be completely upfront and direct review. So I'm going to go over what's in the desktop. We're going to go over what's in the laptop. We're going to go over what you get with the gaming laptop versus the gaming desktop. We're going to talk about some pros and cons with gaming laptops versus desktops, kind of quickly break down the main differences and advantages of both. I have always pretty much had a gaming laptop and a gaming desktop for about 15 years. And I like to have my gaming laptop because I can take it with me when I travel, when I'm on the road. I can take it room to room, take it to the living room TV, set up and play games in the living room. I love the portability. I love the functionality. I can take it to Starbucks. I can do work. I can take it to conferences. I can take it when I travel in my Airstream or whenever I need, when I'm filming and out in the go, on the go for GizmoSlip videos or my review videos, and I need to review or edit footage. The gaming laptop is crucial for me. I need a powerful system on the go to do everything I need to do. When I get home, I oftentimes will use my desktop for ultra high resolution gaming, which can go to maybe higher resolutions, or ultra high resolution VR. And those are probably the two biggest advantages of the desktop. It's got more VRAM and more potential raw graphics power, especially in the upper end. The very highest end components in a desktop always beat a gaming laptop in terms of raw power, simply because of the power throughput that a desktop can potentially have. So, and that just comes down to the ability of a electronic components to be cooled in a thinner, lighter chassis, of course, in a gaming laptop versus a gaming desktop. You know, you can have it water cooled or liquid cooled with all kinds of fans to keep things chilled. And yeah, so what's up, everyone? I see you guys hopping into chat. Did I do a review of the Asus ROG Strix G16 yet? No, I have not. But that is one of the laptops I do plan on doing pretty soon here. Now, the really interesting thing for me about this whole review, this whole question is, like, I think a lot of people in the $1,500 segment, they don't really want to buy, you know, two different systems. They want to buy one system. They either want to get a desktop and they're just going to use that. They don't need that much mobility, or they're going to get a laptop, and the laptop gives them a lot of additional flexibility and mobility, right? So, and the simple fact is, a gaming laptop and a gaming desktop at around the $1,500 mark is probably more competitive than you might think, especially when you're factoring in that the laptop comes with a display, a keyboard, a trackpad already, and of course it's portable. And the laptop basically the laptop basically has a battery. It's got it's just so much more functionality as a device than the desktop. But if you never need to move it, either buying a large laptop or buying a desktop can potentially be more attractive. And I think for those of you that are on the fence between a gaming laptop and a gaming desktop, I hope this video can help you figure out, at least at the $1,500 mark, whether or not a desktop is going to give you actually more performance than a laptop. And of course, there's lots of different desktops and laptops you can buy. So just because I'm featuring these two, you know, particular desktop today and a laptop today, it does not mean that they are necessarily the best bang for the buck or the most performance you can get at $1,500. But they're probably going to be pretty close. So yeah, what's up, everyone? So let me know if you guys have any questions, but we're going to go ahead and start going over all of the different specs and features on the gaming laptop and the gaming desktop that we're reviewing today. So let's go ahead and start into that. So big shout out to LYTE Gaming PCs for, for sending me the desktop. Again, this is not a sponsored video, but there is an affiliate link down below. And for both the laptop and the desktop, if you decide to pick up either of these, you can use those affiliate links down below to get to buy them, and that does help support me as a content creator. But no pressure to buy, obviously. But if you do decide to go with the desktop, you can use the coupon code GizmoSlip, just like in my YouTube name. But just GizmoSlip, no GizmoSlipTech on the coupon code. So if you were to go to their pre-built PCs, basically the goal of LYTE technology is to let you let them put it together for you, and you don't have to do anything. But they charge basically $100 build fee, and then very competitive market pricing for each individual part or component. It's not necessarily like the best possible pricing per part, but it's pretty dang competitive. So you can build yourself out a good desktop at a reasonable price, and then they build it and test it, and then they ship it to you. Now they shipped mine that I got in a double box. So it was double boxed, and the inside of the desktop did have foam padding up inside there, and nothing was damaged. There was no issues with shipping at all. I know a lot of people have had issues with shipping with different pre-built PC companies, but the shipping seemed like it was really well done for the desktop that they sent me, at least. Now, so let's go to pre-built PCs. I believe that's where we need to go. Right. So the PC that we've got here is this LYTE Venom PC, but they do have a lot of different options on here, and you can see that the total pre-built price is $1477 as it is like being sent out. Let's go ahead and just pop into here and see some more details. So it comes with a Ryzen 5 5600. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit so you can see this text a little better. But it clocks up to 4.4 gigahertz across 6 cores, 12 threads, DDR4, 3200 megahertz RAM, RTX 3070 with 8 gigs, and it's a Gigabyte brand, RTX 3070, at least in the unit I have. 512 gig NVMe SSD, 1 terabyte Seagate HDD, but I think it was actually a Western Digital, the one that we got in over here, but that's not really big deal. Gigabyte motherboard, 750 watt, 80 plus gold standard power supply for $89. It's got the Metallic Gear Neo Cube case, which it seems like a pretty nice case. It's got a nice look to it, and a lot of fans, good airflow, and definitely room for upgradability if you want to upgrade to a bigger motherboard or a larger graphics card down the line. And then they have some additional AIO here, 120 millimeter deep cool, and Windows 11 install and stress test. And I'm pretty sure they did do a stress test, because when I loaded up the PC, it actually had some testing applications done on it, or installed on it, pre-installed and checked basically. But I think they may have also just sent that to me because it's like a review unit. So they probably would send a fresh install of Windows if they were sending it to a customer. So overall, this is what you're getting. I think the biggest weakness of this system is probably the processor, being a Ryzen 5 5600, only 6 core, 12 thread. Not exactly the fastest processor, and it may end up bottlenecking us in certain games. Today, we're going to be doing our benchmarks at QHD plus resolution, so 16 by 10, 2560 by 1600 resolution. So we're predominantly going to be GPU bound, I believe, but this 8 gigs of VRAM is also a concerning factor. So the 8 gigs of VRAM may end up, causing us to have to downsize our textures and in certain scenarios. But if you do end up deciding to go with LYTE, doesn't mean you have to get this version. There is a lot of different PC options that they offer here, all the way down to $968 for a 3050 version of the desktop. Obviously, there is just tons of potential customizability. You can get a 4090 desktop 4090 for 3200, which is pretty insane. That's one of the cheaper RTX 4090 setups you can probably get online. And like I got mine, my 4090 back there for about $3,500 from Cyberpower. So that's like $300 cheaper. Though I don't think this one has quite as nice of CPU as what I got on mine. So there's some trade-offs there. So overall, they have a lot of different options on here, and it seems to be a very reputable seller. So there's a link in the description if you want to check out LYTE Technology pre-built PCs and get a custom one. But either way, this is the supplied desktop that we'll be testing with. Now for our laptop, we've got a Legion Pro 5 Gen 8. So we've got an AMD processor as well in this Legion Pro 5. It's got an RTX 4060. For the processor, we've got a Ryzen 7 7745HX. So this one goes up to 5.1 gigahertz, at least in theory, on like 1 or 2 cores. And it's an 8-core, 16-thread processor. And so we got 2 more cores in our laptops, which should give us substantial performance gains. In addition, it's newer generation, right? So newer generation, we got newer processing, better processing nanometer technology in here, and upgraded architecture. I believe a larger cache that should help provide a bit better CPU bottlenecked performance in some of games, especially at 1080p resolution or esports titles. And this laptop does come with a 2560 by 1600 laptop display, 165 hertz LED. And the display is quite nice for the money at $1,500 because it is that QHD plus 1600p resolution display, and it is fairly bright and it's reasonable color gamut, all things considered. Now, for our actual testing, I want to show you guys how I've got it set up here. It's actually really cool. So right here is the desktop here on the right side. So desktop is right here. We've got the desktop hooked up to our Monduo monitor. So it's kind of hard for you to see probably unless I lift this up, but I've got a triple monitor setup right now on the Legion Pro 5. And I've got a link to that Monduo as well down below. It's not affiliated, but they did send the Monduo out for me, and I thought I could use it today and kind of show you it at the same time. It hooks onto the laptop display with this little kind of clip around the display, and then these two swing in. Basically, you can't close the laptop with it still on there. You have to take it off, but they'll swing in and close to be about the size of a laptop themselves. So you can put them in a backpack next to your laptop and take it with you if you want. They're powered through USB-C, and they are also 2560 by 1600 resolution. I believe 165 hertz displays. So they're pretty nice resolution and pretty decent color gamut as well. So you can use triple monitor gaming with them, and I'm going to do a whole live stream with triple monitor gaming, but there's a lot of driver issues still at this point. They're working on software to improve the gaming experience, and that's basically why I haven't done that video yet, but it is in the works. I do plan to do that, like a triple monitor gaming display, because it's like such a high resolution, like it's like 3 times that of 2560 by 1600. So it's a tremendous amount of power that the laptop has to push out. And at the same time, because it's multi-display, it does also reduce and bottleneck performance. So taking a look at I'm gonna go ahead and just close this up a little bit here. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at the desktop real quick. So you can see that we've got some nice lighting on the desktop. We've got LYTE Technology CPU cooler. We've got that CPU AIO there at the top. We've got 6 fans, 3 along the bottom, 3 along the side. There's the RTX 3070 right there. We've got RGB memory, which is a Fury branded memory, DDR4 3200, 16 gigs. And along the front, we have some the power button, a couple more buttons here. I'm not sure exactly what these do. I believe these are like adjust your fans or maybe your RGB lights, your headphone, a USB-C, 2 USB-As, which I've got keyboard and mouse plugged into right now. And yeah, so that's basically the desktop right there. And overall, everything seems to be everything on the desktop seems to be put together quite well. I do think the cable management could be better on the desktop, but yeah, I think it appears to me that they did a reasonable job putting it together. There doesn't appear to be any mechanical issues with the desktop, at least in my testing. We're going to find out how well it performs against this laptop today, because it is not, I don't think it's going to be a clear-cut winner between these two. I think that the desktop, the desktop's got faster memory. The laptop has faster memory. The laptop has a faster CPU. In terms of raw performance power, the RTX 3070 in the desktop should, in theory, have a fair bit more raw performance power, just because it can go up to like 250 plus watts to that GPU. And of course, it's got the higher memory bus bandwidth and all of that. And it's just got more raw processing power in that desktop. But we're also going to be doing some RTX basically DLSS 3 frame generation games today, and we're going to test both frame generation on and off and see how much of a difference that makes as well, because if you are going to go RTX 4000 on the desktop side of things, you might have to spend more than $1,500 to get that desktop. So versus if you go $1,500 on the laptop side, you can get DLSS 3 support with frame generation. So it's really going to depend on what you end up buying, and there's so much customizability and variability in terms of shopping, especially desktops. And of course, the other major difference between laptops and desktops is that desktops are, of course, upgradable down the line. You can replace the motherboard or the processor or just the GPU, or upgrade the RAM, increase the RAM size. Very easy and modular to upgrade your desktop. Not necessarily easy depending on how computer savvy you are, of course. But yeah, so that's kind of the overview of the systems. Let me check chat and see what's going on. Okay, so Ibram says, I think you should also compare a laptop with a 3070 desktop. Do you think it will be faster? I'm not sure. Laptop 47er is faster than a 3060. Obviously faster than a 3060 laptop, faster than a 3060 desktop. Good question. Probably, I think. I don't know. That'd be a good question. Lost Night says, I think the mobile 4060 is closer in terms of performance to the 3060 Ti. That might be true. Tushar says, first time here on stream. Welcome to the live stream, sir. Ibram says, I think the 4060 laptop, but I don't think it can beat a 3060 Ti. Okay, so what do you guys think? We're going to tally up the games as we do these tests, and we're going to kind of count how many games the laptop wins versus the desktop wins. Which system is going to win more benchmarks, okay? More benchmark gaming tests. I think that's kind of the key that I'm looking for personally. I'm looking for not necessarily average FPS. Average FPS is going to probably be pretty close, I think, but in terms of just like wins. And we're going to focus primarily on the average FPS, not 1% lows, but 1% lows do matter. And so if 1% lows are terrible on one system and really good on the other system, we'll give the win to the system with better 1% lows. Because 1% lows does impact smoothness more than your average FPS if 1% lows are terrible, right? But if they're like both about the same, but the average FPS is much higher on another system, that's obviously a much better win. So, awesome sauce. Let's go ahead and move into our split here. Actually, I'm just going to show you HW info on both systems. So let's start off with HW info over here. All right, so this is the overview of a system, just like we showed you, just to verify. It is an RTX 3070 with the Ryzen 5 5600, 7nm process. We're going to start off with a Cinebench R23 run test, and then we're going to move into our gaming tests and benchmarks. We're going to do Timespy after that, and then, of course, we're going to do all of the games. So that's the quick and dirty HW info. You can always pause that and look more closely at that if you wish. Let me pull it up on the Legion. I got to move my mouse over to the Legion here. And It's really tricky doing 3 different systems like this because it is, I don't have enough table space, which is why I ended up using the Monduo. The Monduo being this awesome, triple monitor setup for laptops. So let's go and open HW info. It should be in here. Weird that it's not in here. There's this. Huh. Weird that it's not in, because obviously we did run HW info. Okay, I should have a copy of it I can grab from here. Says it's already in there. Oh, a long time ago was minimized. That's why. Okay. Super weird. All right, so it's going to pull up our a summary of the Legion laptop here as well. So there's our HW info for the Legion. And you can see the Ryzen 7 7745HX on a 5nm process. And then we've got 16 gigs of RAM in here, but it's DDR5. And it should be 5200 based on this. So in terms of clock speed on the RAM, and yeah, so RTX 4070 should say 4070 somewhere over here, right? But it's just giving us the actual model number. It is an RTX 4070. Cool. So let's go ahead and get into Cinebench R23 next. So let's go ahead and go up to Cinebench R23. We'll open that sucker up. And we'll do a few runs, and then we'll also try doing a single-threaded run because that does impact performance, and it is going to make a big difference, I think, with these. It's going to make a big difference in terms of single-threaded performance for gaming performance, right? Because single-threaded performance oftentimes impacts games much more than your typical laptop. So we're going to get both of these going side by side. And I've got to operate 2 different mouses here, which is like tricky, but we'll make it work. All right, so we can go ahead and let's go ahead and make sure that the Lenovo, the laptop is in a proper, it's in performance mode. That's good. That's what we're looking for. And right now, we're going to take off the GPU overclock feature here because we do not have the 3070 overclocked at all, so that way it'll be a little bit more fair. So we're in the high performance mode for the Legion Pro 5, which is the key here. And so let's go ahead and do a R23 test. And I'm going to go ahead and get HW info opened again and sensors mode. This is just going to warm up test basically. It's not going to be we're not going to look at that and really compare it, at least not in detail. So I'm going to get this HW info pulled up over here on the desktop as well. And I can hear those laptop fans starting to spin up. Bingo. All right. And all right. So there we go. We can minimize that. All right. I'm going to pull this over right there. Cool. Can we see all of that? I think we'll be able to see everything. I'll just put this right here, and I can put this right here. All right, and now we're gonna do our HW info here. That should be about right. And I'm gonna try to get it so we can see our power limits and temperatures and clock speeds all on the same window at the same time if I can. There's a lot of little things in here that make it a little bit difficult, but there we go. I think that should be about right. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and switch. I really need a third mouse, but we're going to go into our benchmark split. How is that looking? Oop. All right, so we can actually take this a little to the left here. There we go. All right, so there's the Legion Pro 5 on the left, and then we've got our desktop on the right. Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and do just do a couple multi-core runs and see the rough range of what we're gonna be hitting pretty much. And we're also gonna look at what kind of, we need to change this from a 10-minute run down to shorter run. Okay. And we're going to primarily be looking at like what kind of temperatures we're hitting, what kind of clock speeds we're hitting, what kind of package power we're pulling. And so right now on the laptop, let me see if I can get this focused in. I think that's about as focused in as we're going to get. I hope you guys can see that all right. Let's see. I'm going to try darken it down. Does that help? I think that helps. And maybe I'll try zooming in just a hair. All right. So the laptop's already done at 17,997. So about 18,000 total for the laptop. And let's go ahead and just get another run going. You can see that we did max out our temperatures here at 100 degrees Celsius, which I believe is going to be pretty typical of this Ryzen chip. It runs hot, but it runs fast. And I do kind of want to repaste this still. I haven't done it yet. We did run in some hot temperatures on this chip, in particular on like this Core 7 at 99 degrees right here, Core 3 at 95 right there, Core 5. So it's like the odd cores are several degrees warmer than the even cores. So it makes me wonder if we actually have a bad pace job on this Legion Pro 5, or maybe I guess uneven pressure maybe on that. It's hard to say exactly. All right, so the desktop got 10,801. That shows you the power of having more cores and obviously updated architecture. So basically, the laptop is faster for sure in the CPU department, okay? So that's something to keep in mind. Now, that doesn't always necessarily translate into gaming performance, and this is definitely going to be a gaming performance-focused review. So we're going to have to see exactly how that translates into gaming performance as we go along. There will be CPU-bound games that we'll be testing. You know, we've got Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which tends to be very CPU-bound, though in these lower-powered systems, sometimes they can still be GPU-bound. It depends on the resolution and what settings you run it at. So yeah, what's up, Crestwater? Welcome. Text Guide says, do you think the Lenovo will come up with an 18-inch laptop? I think it's possible, but they have not hinted at it or anything like that so far. So again, 17,800. So we're shooting just shy of 18K on the Legion Pro 5 in Cinebench R23, which is obviously phenomenal, especially for a laptop that's $1,500. It's not quite as fast as what some of the Intel chips are doing, around $1,500. You can get about 2,000 or 20,000, a little over 20,000 even potentially in like something like the Zephyrus G16, which costs $1,449. So again, even a little more performance could be had in theory from some of the other laptops. And that's just because of all the E-cores, and so it ends up having more total threads than what this Ryzen chip does. So 10,800 again, and while we've got this Cinebench R23 running, let's take a look at this desktop's performance as well as the temperatures. So right now it's doing 4.25 gigahertz across all of the cores. It's hitting that consistent and nice and steady, which is great to see. We are at only 57 degrees, 53 for our core temps, 58 on our CPU package. That is phenomenal temps. Obviously, we're only pulling 77 watts of power through this GPU or through the CPU, which is really not that much. 77 watts it's enough for 6 cores, 12 threads, obviously, right? And that's all you need. But like, for example, let's see what we're pulling on our Legion. I'm pretty sure we're doing closer to 90 or more over on here on the Legion. Let's see. So it's starting to run. We're doing 93, 94 watts right now here on the Legion, and 92 watts. So the laptop is pulling higher wattage, even though it is thermal throttling at that wattage. And obviously, in many of the laptops these days can go to much higher wattage. We're seeing like 135 plus wattage, like 155, peaking at like 200 watts in some of these laptops this year. Not sustained. Sustained is more like 135 to like 145 for a lot of the top end laptops. So overall, our multi-core performance is going to be about 70% faster in the laptop. Okay, so about 7,000 more points, over 10,000. That's obviously going to be about in the 70%-ish range between these two laptops in terms of just if you were to render videos or whatever on a primarily CPU bound scenario. Now, we are doing single-threaded performance, so this is not going to be nearly as focused on overall like temps or like power throughput, because a single core does not take that much performance. So you can see the desktop here doing 4.45 gigahertz on a single core at a time, and the laptop doing 5.1 gigahertz. Looks like across multiple cores, but it's really a really light load, so it's not really doing 5.1 on all of the cores. It's just whichever core is actually being used to process everything. The temperatures on the laptop in single core mode is much better here, 70 degrees Celsius, which is excellent. It's only pulling 38 watts of power through that CPU right now. And over here on the desktop, we're doing 39 watts of power. So almost the same, 38 watts of power, which is interesting. That's pretty interesting that we're pulling very similar in our single core load. That said, I'm not sure how much of a difference there's going to be. I imagine the desktop will actually be able to compete a little bit better this time around, because one of the main advantages for the laptop boosting its performance is that it can do 8 cores, 16 threads versus 6 cores, 12 threads. And that's a big difference. Having 4 additional threads is definitely going to help boost performance noticeably. Obviously, in addition, it's hitting higher clock speeds. So I'm expecting the laptop to still be ahead because of those higher clock speeds and newer architecture. But I don't think it's going to be a 70% difference. I'm thinking it's going to be more like 20, 30% difference. Maybe not even that much. But it's going to be a lot closer. So this test usually takes around 10 minutes, but we'll have to see how long these take. You can see the laptop is made that much progress, and the desktop is currently on that much progress. So you can see that kind of how fast these windows actually render shows you the rough performance of what the machines are actually doing in the moment, because this is like an active render, as if you're inside the actual software rendering a scene. That's how this works, like this Maxon benchmark. So anyway, so checking out chat, Christopher says, it bothers me that the Lenovo didn't have a mini LED screen option with their displays when their displays support Dolby Vision. Jordan says, okay, I'll bite. Brah, GPU can't even be compared using R23. We're doing more than just benchmarks for games, but we are going to go straight to gaming benchmarks after the CPU test. The main reason why I'm doing this CPU test is that it's, people who use gaming laptops, they don't just use them for gaming typically. Oftentimes, they're going to want to use them for content creation, Photoshop. They're going to want to use them for all kinds of different potential tasks. And I think it's important to recognize that even if you don't necessarily have a direct or immediate use for, multi-core performance, it's nice to know it's there, right? So if you're going to pay $1,500, how much performance are you getting in that CPU? Obviously, if you're focused more on CPU performance rather than just gaming performance, you could get like a desktop that has a 3060 or 3060 Ti and an upgraded CPU, like a higher tier CPU. It's basically like a shifting of the focus of your desktop build. Just like with laptops, you can always get like a lower end CPU and a higher end GPU, or vice versa. I think one of the really interesting laptops, if you're looking for like a really high-end CPU, is like the Strix Scar 17, because it basically, you get the Ryzen 9 7945HX, which is a 16-core 32-thread, and then an RTX 4060, which only costs like $1,800. So That one costs 300 more than what we've got here in front of us, but the CPU performance, like the raw CPU performance, is almost literally double. So obviously the battery life will not be as good on that Ryzen 9. It's just not built for battery life, really. Whereas this Ryzen 7 7745HX is much better with battery life. So there are trade-offs when you go with that 16-core 32-thread, but the performance difference is just enormous for only $300. Like it's a 20% increase to cost and like 100% improvement to CPU performance. Don says the i7-13700HX performs way better than the Ryzen 7745HX and not a huge price difference. That's also a good option. The i9-13900HX is actually probably the one I would recommend if you're after the most CPU performance and you want an Intel chip. Like the i9-13900HX is the best value probably over the i7-13700HX. Because again, I think the 13700HX was doing, what is it, like 23 or 24K in Cinebench R23, and then the i9-13900HX goes over 30,000 in terms of performance. It does heavily depend on what price you get it, because the i9 in the Intel side does have a hefty markup sometimes depending on the laptop model. So Crest of Honor says just got a score of 12,343 on the Ryzen 7 5800H. So it's a big jump. Yeah, it's a big jump between the new Ryzen chips versus the older generation Ryzen chips. The new architecture and the lower nanometer process just makes them much more power efficient in the same size package of laptop. So right now the laptop is almost finished up. We've got 2 more bars here, 1 more bar here on the left, and the desktop still has like 6 more bars overall to finish up. So it's kind of interesting to see this race play out in real time. I'm thinking it's going to be about a 20 to 30% difference still, but we'll see. Turboman asks, isn't the 4060 laptop a 3060 Ti desktop? Well, we'll have to see how much everything translates in terms of performance. The 4060 laptop is probably a little bit closer in terms of 3060 Ti, but I ended up choosing these 2 laptops primarily based on the pricing, right? Like if you went with a 3060 Ti, you could get a 3060 Ti desktop for quite a bit less than a 3070. A 3070 usually is a noticeable price bump up, bringing the pricing between the desktop and laptop a bit more in line. And so I wasn't necessarily trying to do perfect parity of product lineups, but more pricing parity and comparing the CPU performance versus GPU performance and what you're getting in both of the packages as an overall package. Okay, so our test is done here on the laptop. Let's see what we got. It is 1,830 points for the Legion Pro 5. And that's obviously a pretty dang good score for a single-threaded performance. So we'll have to see what we get on the desktop. It's down to the last 2 lines of rendering now on the desktop. Is the laptop 4060 actually better than the desktop 4060? So the thing is, if you're going to buy a desktop these days, almost everyone wants to do like QHD gaming. A lot of people want to do 4K gaming. And the 4060 desktop only has 8 gigs of VRAM. Just like the laptop, they both have 8 gigs of VRAM. And it's definitely a weakness in both systems. So that's one of the biggest factors on why the 4060 was kind of slaughtered in reviews. So we got our result. We got 1,441, which is obviously very good. I think that our overall. Let me see if I can get these to focus a little bit better, because it's kind of like focusing on one but not the other at the same time. I think that's a little better. Let's see. So, yeah, so we got about a 400 point difference or 390 point difference between these two. So, yeah, let's just let's calculate that up real quick. So we got 1830 minus 144, so 389. And then we'll divide that by 1441. So it's a 26.9% improvement to single-threaded performance, which is basically right in line with what I was thinking it was going to be. All right, we're going to move into Timespy now. Let's see what we get for our Timespy GPU test. This is going to be a great overview of basically the type of performance you should be able to expect in raw GPU bound games where the CPU is basically out of the picture. All right, so we're going to need to go offline. And we're going to need to go streaming. Disable. There we go. Well, I hope we don't run into any issues running everything at the same time. Some of these games may not run at the same time, so we'll just have to find out. Okay, so we've got Timespy there. We've got... Oh, I do want to mention that both of the laptop and the desktop are running at the same driver version at 535.98. So... that's good. I like when possible to run everything at the same driver version and being able to do the test at the same time. I think it's important to update them to be the same, and they are updated to be the same right now. So cool. And I'm just gonna go to scaling. I believe this is set to 150. Yeah, that looks correct. Okay. Bingo. All right. And here goes Timespy. Let's go ahead and see what we get on both of these systems. And of course, we're going to also be looking for our GPU temperatures, CPU temperatures, what power limits we're running between these two as we're comparing performance. Xrid says 7945HX is way better than a 13900 and not a huge price difference. Well, the 7945HX is actually maybe even cheaper than the i9 chip. So it's just going to depend. Raul Capella says LYTE is a terrible company. I would not recommend them from what I've heard and seen from clients, even recent cases. Thanks for the feedback. I'm sure every online retailer has had negative reviews, so it's hard for me to just categorically deny them, but I've seen positive reviews as well. So taking a look at our CPU GPU performance and everything. So our initial temperatures, well, let's just look at power limits first. 109 watts of power to the RTX 4060 here on the left, 63 degrees right now on that 4060. And our CPU is only 66 degrees, which is very good. 37 watts of power to that CPU. And on the right side here, 260 watts of power to the GPU. 100% GPU utilization, 64, 65 degrees right there on the GPU. So we're getting good GPU temperatures as well. Our CPU temperatures are very low at 38 degrees. You know, we've got that dedicated CPU cooler. It seems to be doing a great job keeping that CPU extra cool. Now, in a laptop, CPUs tend to get quite a bit warmer simply because the CPU and GPU tend to share heat pipes. And when you have shared heat pipes, that almost always means that when one of the components, like the GPU is under load or the CPU is under load, it's naturally going to want to heat up the other component. So like the other CPU or GPU. And in a desktop, you don't really have that problem unless there's not enough ambient air being sucked into the desktop and it's getting too hot inside the case. As long as the case has good enough airflow, then the GPU and CPU typically have very independent temperatures between the two of them. Niebuhr says, wait, Lenovo is OC. Weren't you going to test stock? I did test it with GPU overclock disabled, but there is like a default slight overclock. That's just like baked into almost all of the laptops this year. When you're in kind of turbo or high performance mode, there's like a small overclock that's being applied. But if you did the GPU overclock button in the Lenovo Vantage software, it would actually overclock it extra. Like it would be another burst of overclocking above. Crest of Honor says, I'll give laptops this. The 40 series is actually surprisingly efficient. Yeah, it is really efficient. Of course, it's on the new architecture as well. I believe that during the graphics tests there, we were getting more FPS on the RTX 3070, which makes sense. It's a desktop card. It's a higher power limit. And it's got a lot of advantages inside of the GPU specs. So right now we're pulling 77 watts of power to the CPU, doing 4.8 gigahertz and 100 degrees Celsius on that CPU. So we're slamming that CPU on the laptop, and it actually, let's see what we get on the desktop. Desktop results are loading. So our laptop, let's take a look at our laptop right now. 10,968 for our GPU score, 11,373 for our CPU score. And so we are basically flipped between the desktop and the laptop. You've got 13,500 over here on the desktop, being a 2,500 point advantage. That's pretty significant. That's about a 20% gain in terms of raw graphics power. But then our CPU score being 7,748 is a bit lower, right? So it's not exactly the most ideal CPU score, and that's kind of the trade-off that you're getting when you get this particular pre-built. Your CPU bound games are probably going to suffer a little bit based on this score. Simply because it's a 6-core 12-thread part that doesn't go to as high a clock speed as some of the higher end CPUs. Okay, so that gives us a great idea of performance on raw graphics performance. I also want to go ahead and test Port Royale, or let's see here. Do we have? We can go ahead and just do Speedway since we have Speedway installed on both. This is another test that really focuses on camera and lighting. So this one's going to be interesting to see the performance, because it's like a difference between the Ada Lovelace architecture and the older RTX 3000 series architecture. So it may be, I'm curious to see if the 4060 maybe makes some gains on the 3070 in terms of maybe not being 20% behind, because this is factoring in a lot of ray tracing rendering, and the new Ada architecture is supposedly better at that. But there still may be a 20% difference here between these two. So I'm very curious to see what happens. Extrude says, are you planning to review the 7845HX? Nobody on YouTube did a review on it. I currently have no plans to review that one, but if I get an opportunity to, I definitely will. So right now it's looking like we're getting 29 FPS here on the Legion, 37 on the RTX 3070. So that's still about a 20% gain in terms of performance. So that's still very significant. I gotta say, we're getting a pretty high amount of wattage going through this GPU, 116 watts to the RTX 4060. That's a little bit higher than it was in Timespy. and a little bit higher than you typically see as well for an RTX 4060 laptop. Most of the time, it's not running that high. I'm guessing it's because it's so much ray tracing going on in these scenes. Captain Manny says, I bought last week the 13700 HX 4060 Legion. My 3D Mark score on the GPU was 10,500 on regular mode. Is this a good result? That's a good result in balance mode. If you go to performance mode, you probably get a little bit more. Okay, so we got 2,711 for the Speedway and 3,423 for the RTX 3060. So that's even, is that more than 20%? That's a 718 increase to the score. A little bit more than 20% gain in terms of performance. So like 25% approximately, I think. Interesting. So it's about the same between those two, which I do think that's very interesting. Let's go ahead and move into our first game. Let's see here. So there's certain games that we're going to be able to test and certain games we're not going to be able to test because they're offline games. Let's do Cyberpunk 2077 to start with. Also, I noticed that the Riva tuner is messed up. There we go. Yeah, the text was not the right size in Afterburner during Timespy, so I went ahead and changed it. Professor Energy says, I tried running 3D Mark on my 4070 Ti eGPU setup an hour ago, but didn't work though. Maybe software is not supported. If you have it properly set up, I would think that you should be able to do any kind of 3D Mark testing that you want, to the best of my knowledge. All right, we're going to need to mute the audio there. All right. Looks like our resolution is incorrect right now on the desktop. Let's go ahead and fix that. All right, 2560 by 1600. There we go. All right, very good. All right, so we're gonna do we're gonna try Ray Tracing Ultra as our preset, and we're gonna do DLSS to quality on both of the laptops. And we're going to start out with no frame generation on either laptop. And then we'll test again. Ray Tracing Ultra, quality, no frame gen. Okay, so no frame generation. This is a identical settings test. And then we'll also test to see how much of an advantage frame generation gives us. If I remember correctly, we ran into 1% low issues on the Legion last time we were running these tests. So I'm very curious to see what we are going to get this time around. All right, I got to make sure that all of the stats can be seen okay. All right, so we're already getting, we're already loaded in on the Legion. I guess our SSD is faster on the Legion. There is a couple of games I had to install on the external drive that was just a regular HDD, and that's going to cause some slower load times on the desktop. Okay, so right now, a pretty significant advantage for the desktop, which is, you know, to be expected in any kind of GPU-bound type of games. I gotta say, our 1% low so far on the desktop is also vastly superior, right? So I want to also start keeping score of which laptop is winning, all right, and which desktop is winning. So far we have tested. We're gonna count Cinebench R23, multi-core and single core as 2 tests, and then Speedway and Timespy as each a test. So we are currently, I guess we should do CPU score and GPU score separately on Timespy as well. So basically right now we are 3 for the laptop because it won all of the CPU tests so far, and 2 wins for the desktop. And after this is going to be another win for the desktop. I'm pretty sure we got 35.98 FPS here on the laptop, and we got 45.21. 45.21 on the desktop. So 10 more FPS. And on top of that, our 1% lows were much better on the desktop as well, which is interesting to me. Why are the 1% lows so massively better when both of the systems have 8 gigs of VRAM? I'm curious, chat, if you have any thoughts on that, because that does not make much sense to me personally. And I find that a little bit odd. I find that a little bit odd that we're not that the 1% lows are just so much better on the desktop. Maybe just the throughput or something of the GPU allows it to not stutter with the VRAM limitation. I don't know. That is so interesting. Maybe it's the memory bit bandwidth. Maybe that's a difference when the VRAM is being close to being overwhelmed. Like Cyberpunk at this resolution really takes a lot of VRAM, more than 8 gigs in like it wants to pull more than 8 gigs. So that's definitely, I think, the key reason here. So that's definitely a win for the desktop. Let's drop down to 1080p. All right. And we're going to switch it to, let's just say that the person is trying to go for, well, actually, right. We need to do one of these tests with frame generation on before we change anything else, right? We need to rerun the benchmark with frame generation enabled and see if the laptop can make up the difference. Of course, it's raw, real frames versus some of the frames on the laptop are going to be AI generated frames, so they're not going to be quite as good, but it still massively impacts gameplay smoothness. That said, if the 1% lows are still much better on the desktop, then I think that's still a win for the desktop, even if frame generation gives us a huge lead in terms of average FPS. So we'll see. All right, so we're going here. Wow, the laptop's doing really well. Oh, the laptop had a big stutter there, dropping our 1% lows down to 1 FPS. But it seems to be doing a lot better now. Like it had one big stutter and it really tanked the FPS. Another big stutter. Oh, another big stutter. Ooh, that is a lot of stuttering. Also, it appears that we're at the wrong resolution on the laptop. So, and I cannot, yeah, I'm pretty sure we're at 1080p. I forgot to change it back to 2560 by 1600, which is a silly mistake. Desktop is using twice the power for only 10 FPS more. That's a very valid observation. You know, I think that really makes a huge difference. Now, this result is not valid. This is not a good test. This is bad because we're at 1080p on the left. We're at 2560 by 1600 on the right. So yeah. This is an invalid test. Let's go back here. Let's change the resolution back. All right, there we go. All right, beautiful. Okay, and we're gonna run the benchmark here on the right first. And then we'll start running on the left because it tends to load a little bit faster here on the Legion laptop. We'll see if we timed it about right. Wow. The laptop is stuttering so much. I think there's got to be something else going on with the laptop right now. The GPU wattage dropping down to like 20 or 30, which makes me think that we maybe are. I'm guessing that we're running into some like power adapter issues or something. I don't know. I'm gonna make sure that this cable is up higher. Make sure the power adapter is fully plugged in. Yeah, everything's plugged in. We are getting just so many stutters over here on the RTX 4060 laptop right now. Again, 45 FPS. Hold on. Looks like we switched our presentation. Sorry about that. Okay. The cable clicked the laptop button. So, all right. So this is going to be our test number 2 that we did. Interestingly enough, 45 FPS on the desktop. With frame generation, we got 42. But I'm pretty sure we had some kind of. I want to retest it. Because I think we were running into some power loss issues or something along those lines. I do have a lot of things plugged into one wall outlet. I don't know if, because I normally, the desktop's pulling a lot of juice. I've got my desktop on behind me. Maybe the breaker, that could be the breaker in my house is actually being overloaded because of too many things. I've got 3 laptops right now. 2 laptops and 2 desktops all on the same breaker essentially. So look at that, 21 watts. We're jumping down, and it was in the exact same spot right here at the beginning. It makes me think that it is probably a memory issue. I'm guessing it's a memory bandwidth issue on the desktop there. I just went ahead and reset our FPS there. Yeah. I mean, that to me does seem like the power adapter is going in and out because it is dropping wattage a lot. I don't think that that's just the memory bandwidth right there. I don't think that's I don't think we're being VRAM limited right there. That's not the only cause of that. It should not be dropping down to 20 watts of power. So something else is going on there. I don't know what. It makes me want to restart the Legion and redo this test though, because it's basically not a good test. So we're gonna go ahead and restart. Stardom says my overclocked 3070 laptop at 150 watts scores very close to a desktop 3070. 1250 versus 13,500. Yeah, that's pretty close. Yeah. That's a super overclock on a 3070 though. The normal 3070 gets like 11,000, between 11,000 and 11,500. So that's a hefty OC, sir. So again, we got 45 on the desktop. There we go. Let's see. Battery, it says, is charged at 100%. Let's get Steam. I don't know why Steam is not opening. I guess things are still loading. Getting back into Cyberpunk now. We will see if we can get this to test properly. I have hopes that it will, but if it doesn't, we're going to move on to the next game and see if we run into the same issue. Obviously, I think the first time we ran it, I don't think it had that issue dropping wattage. So pretty interesting bug there. Or maybe I just didn't notice it the first time. Zabalds, welcome to the live stream. I see that shiny, fancy membership badge, sir. It is very nice. Thank you for your support. Okay. So, 2560 by 1600. Frame generation is enabled. Let's try running the benchmark. David Dominguez says it's getting bottlenecked by the VRAM. Tested in 1080p without ray tracing, it'll probably do fine. Yeah, but the wattage being dropped, like both the desktop and laptop are being limited by the VRAM. But those are really hefty drops. It could be just VRAM. Like it is possible that it's just the VRAM doing that. But man, it is insane. You know, like the interesting part to me is if it is the VRAM causing these crazy dips, like the RTX 3070 has the same VRAM and we're running the exact same settings. So why aren't we seeing the same types of 1% low stutters on the RTX 3070 desktop? You know? Like right now, the laptop appears to be getting higher FPS. You think frame generation requires extra VRAM? It's possible, you know. That may be true. I don't know. That's an interesting observation or interesting thought. You know, in the first pass we did, it didn't seem to stutter nearly as much, and that's with frame generation off. Or at least it didn't have those hefty drops. So 52 this time. So the laptop won in terms of like, the laptop won in one sense, but all right. So let's drop the resolution. We'll do 1080p and we're going to do it with no ray tracing. We're going to go to ultra. All right. DLSS on quality, frame generation on. All right, so this is how someone would, you know, potentially play this at 1080p resolution. All right, so this would be like let's say someone's trying to run this game at 1080p to get the most FPS. Say they wanted a really smooth FPS experience. Like that's what we're looking at here. In terms of trying to simulate, we're trying to simulate that type of a person. And let's see what we get now. Some of the stats are going to kind of go off screen unless I reposition the camera a little bit better. Let's see. Yeah, that's tough. Okay, so I think that's about as good as I can possibly get it. So the desktop doing 109. Ooh, it's close. The laptop doing 125. So far, the laptop not stuttering or chugging at all. So that's a good sign. You know, our VRAM both doing about 6.6 gigs. You know, the 4090 needs a little bit more VRAM, not by much, but like 150 more VRAM or 100 more. And that may be the frame gen. I don't know. The FPS average looks like the laptop is doing about 10 to 12 more FPS so far, which is really interesting. So I would attribute the first two tests we did in Cyberpunk to the desktop wins. This one is going to be a laptop win, which puts the laptop at 4 wins, desktop at 3 wins. overall. So we're 4-3. And it's a pretty clear win for the laptop in this scenario. The gaming experience has higher 1% lows on the laptop and a higher average FPS, about 15 more. So, and this also may be related to our CPUs being better on the desktop, or sorry, on the laptop, because the Legion 5 has a better CPU, right? So, all right, so let's go ahead and move on to Dead Space now. I'm gonna have to reposition the camera again. I'm not sure exactly how I'm gonna need to put it though. We'll find out. Okay. Frosty7 says, keep up the good work. It's very interesting with the Legion lineup personally. Cool. Frosty7, hello there. Found your channel not long ago. Been following since I own a Legion 7 Gen 6 from 2021 with the Ryzen 7 5800 and an RTX 3080. Absolutely amazing gaming laptop. I have got I've got the Legion Pro 7i, which is the Intel version of that same laptop, like right over there. So I really enjoyed my Legion 7i as well, sir. I gave the Legion 7i like gaming laptop of the year back when it was out, basically. Okay, that's pretty good. And also, I just realized how much screen glare we're getting. We're getting a lot of screen glare. I'm going to turn off the light behind me. Yes, Don, this is the hot game. So, Dead Space is one of the games that really cranks on your CPU. You know, it puts a good amount of wattage to the GPU and then really cranks on your CPU. And oftentimes, especially in almost every Ryzen laptop this year, I think every Ryzen laptop I've tested this year, it's basically thermal throttled that CPU. I mean, we're already thermal throttling on the CPU 99 degrees right now on the Legion. Stardom says, how are you enjoying that CPU, the 5800H? I find that it bottlenecks in most modern games. That's a great question, and I would tend to agree. If you're doing 1080p gaming in particular, you're going to bottleneck a lot more. But the Legion 7, I believe, had a QHD plus display, so it was a higher resolution display. And so I'm pretty sure it is less likely to bottleneck if you're at QHD resolution. So the 5800H makes more sense at QHD resolution than 1080 for sure. A lot of like the more budget laptops though only did 1080 for, you know, when you think about a lot of the laptops that have 5800Hs in them, they were like the more budget friendly mid-range priced laptops typically. And yeah, that was usually a struggle. I'll say that much. That was a struggle at 1080p. 5800H is usually not ideal for 1080p gaming, but it'll do all right. I mean, it's not like it's going to be awful performance. It's just not going to be like maxing out everything type of situation. All right, so we're going to go to quality, DLSS on quality. We're going to the ultra preset. The desktop may have crashed. Or it's loading. I guess it's loading all the settings as we change them. All right, there we go. All right, we're going to check our resolution. 2560 by 1600. Very nice. All right, and we're going to go ahead and continue. All right. Okay, so, wow, it's close. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get these. I'm going to get these positioned a little better so we can read the stats a little bit better. Okay. Whoa. Okay, so quick examination. We are only pulling 200 watts on the GPU. GPU utilization is at 100%. I believe that's GPU utilization, or maybe that's GPU. I'm not sure which one is which. There's two percentages there. I need to double check on an Afterburner which one's which. The CPU, 55 degrees on the desktop, which is excellent. 4.4 gigahertz, basically meaning that we're using a single core primarily. 64 watts of power to that CPU. And of course, since a desktop has independent coolers for your desktop and laptop, or sorry, for your CPU and GPU, our temperatures are very good on the CPU. Taking a look at our Legion, we got 90 watts of power to that GPU, 100% GPU utilization, 96 degrees, 97 degrees on that CPU, very spicy, 63 watts of power to that CPU, which is very similar, right? Now, laptop CPUs, they were designed to hit that 100 degrees Celsius all the time. It's not a big deal, but it is spicy, and you can have reduced performance. For example, if you're a warmer environment, it's going to throttle you sooner, and you might lose some FPS or something, you know. But I have had the average running now for about a minute here in Dead Space, and we are averaging 65 FPS here on the Legion, 74 FPS over here on the RTX 3070. So we have another win for the desktop, bringing us up to 4 versus 4. I believe that's a tie now. We are in a tie in terms of which ones are winning. Let's go ahead and walk around a little bit and just see what we get doing our traditional test. I'm going to get it set. I should be able to get us set up. Let me get it positioned correctly here. I should be able to get us in the same like kind of walkway or something here, and then we'll kind of center that up, and we'll come around here. And we'll center that up, and we'll walk around the same time. So here again, the desktop's doing about 10 FPS more. It's not as big as of a difference as what we saw in Timespy, and that may be our CPU, right? Our CPU differences in the laptop are kind of helping make up for a little bit of the weaker GPU, but still, it's a noticeable performance difference, especially with our 1% lows right now. Our 1% lows are pretty noticeably better on the desktop. So, all right, so beautiful. We are in the right section now. We're going to do a new test walking back and see how we do. This is my normal walk test for Dead Space, and we're going to reset, and we are walking. All right, so 63 FPS for the laptop, 72 FPS for the desktop, a 9 FPS difference at 64 FPS. Isn't that about a 17 FPS gain for the desktop in this game? Interesting. I gotta say, this is still pretty close though. Like this is, I mean, if you were playing this game, you probably have a hard time realizing the difference in terms of performance. Just because they're both over 60 FPS and the 1% lows are pretty good on both. The 1% lows are noticeably better on the desktop, but still over 30 FPS for 1% lows is still enough to where it's not a bad experience on the laptop either. Okay, so there is our Dead Space. Let's move into Dying Light 2 and see what we get. Justin says, Nerdy, you here? No, I don't think he's here. Justin, Gizmo, how are your dogs doing? What dogs do you have now? I have Zeus and I have Hero. Those are the two dogs I have. Yeah, Justin, I do remember you from back when we used to play Fortnite a lot. Crestfire says, those CPU temps. Yeah, that's true. Frosty7, yeah, the Legion 7 Gen 6 has the QHD resolution as well. Nice. All right. So now we need to set all of our settings correctly. high quality ray tracing. Looks like we have everything still set from when I tested the game last time. Let's hop into our test then. We're gonna have everything be the exact same settings, except we'll start with frame generation on the left. Oh, it looks like we have to restart the game to turn on ray tracing for the desktop. That'll take just a moment. Okay. Let us just double check that we have all the settings correctly. DLSS should be on quality. Everything's going to be the same except reflex on. Except we'll have frame generation enabled in the first test, and then actually I started with no frame gen in our first test. Let's just take off frame gen for our first test. So no frame generation in our first test. Everything's going to be exactly the same. High quality ray tracing default, same resolution and everything. Let's go ahead and move into our benchmark. You still play Fortnite? I still play Fortnite every now and then. I like the new zero build mode in Fortnite. It's pretty freaking fun. More than I like the build mode. Like, that was the reason I kind of quit Fortnite. The building just got too obnoxious to play against. And you feel like you end up practicing building more than actually just playing the game. Okay, so wow, pretty big gains on in terms of gaming performance on the desktop right now. 66 FPS for our average. The number we're looking at is this middle number. This is our average. Our 1% lows are going to basically be invalid as it switches between the two scenes, but our average FPS should be pretty accurate. 14 FPS gain right now, which is about a 26% overall performance gain for the desktop, which is right in line with what Timespy had. So in terms of our expected performance, this is basically a really great example of what you'd expect at you know, when you're playing a game. If you didn't have frame generation and you're GPU bound, I think this is going to be right in line with the rough range of performance that you're going to have between these two. But we'll have to keep testing, because there's going to be some more games that we're going to be testing, and they are going to definitely be CPU bound games. So yeah. Right now, it's still a 14 FPS gain for the desktop. Baka says, do we know when the Legion 7 Pro is coming out? It's already out, I believe. Stardom says, what CPU are you using on the desktop? The desktop has the Ryzen 5 5600. So we got 67 FPS on average. 52.8. At least these are the median FPS. So that's, yeah, a 14 FPS gain basically for the desktop, right around that 25, 26, 27% range. Let's go ahead and back out. And so that's another win for the desktop. That brings the desktop up to 5, laptops at 4 right now. Let us try frame generation and see if that's enough to make a difference in this game to push us over the edge. I think it will be, but we'll find out. So frame generation is enabled. Benchmark. What's up, Venom? All right. Okay, so wow, it's actually pretty close, but the laptop is having a slight lead, 74 FPS versus 72, 68 now. So about a 4 or 5 FPS lead for the laptop now that frame generation is enabled. Interesting. Very interesting. Frosty says, seeing how the new Legion Pro 7 from this year has a lot of features removed, I hope to see a new Legion 9 series coming soon with the features making a return, which we had on the Gen 7. A lot of people are wishing for that, and maybe if enough people wish for it, Lenovo will actually do it, but I don't know. Probably not. So the laptop cementing a bit more of a lead now, 7 FPS on average more than the desktop. Do you think a 3070 Ti would be better than the laptop? Maybe. It's close enough to where the 3070 Ti might push it over the edge to be in the lead. But surprisingly, frame generation really not adding that many frames right now at this resolution. Like it bumped us up from being 14 behind to now being, it's about 7 in the lead, right? So about a 21 FPS boost, which is significant, but it's just not so massive that it's, so we got 73.9 versus 66.9. So yeah, 67 versus 74 basically. And let's try one more test at 1080p. So the laptop wins. We're now 5-5. Interesting. We're staying neck and neck right now. Let's drop to 1080p, but we're going to do raw. No frame generation. All right, so 1080p. DLSS was on balance. DLSS was on performance on the laptop. So, those were invalid tests. We got to retest, guys. We got to retest. Dang. So we're back to 4-4. I hate when I mess it up. I thought we had the same DLSS on quality. Did it reset somehow? I don't think it did, but yeah. So we're gonna have to do a raw test again. Save. DLSS quality. We want VSync. Wait. We want VSync off as well, of course. Yes. Okay. Save. Wow. Okay. Whew. Okay. I think these are better settings now. Goodness. All right. Let's go ahead and benchmark this now. So this is raw, no frame generation, and DLSS now is set to the same level. Let's get a more realistic look here. Back to 4-4. Okay. Back to 4-4. All right. Justin says, what should I upgrade first? I've a 5800X and a 3070 Ti is a good combo. What should I upgrade first? Because I want to have better FPS in Warzone 2. If you want better FPS in Warzone 2, that's usually going to be CPU bound. So you'd probably want to upgrade your CPU. But if you have like the 5800X3D, then that would probably be one of the better CPUs for Warzone anyway. See, look, our FPS is the same. It's a 14 FPS gap between, so it's the same. It's the same. The results are still valid from our first test. I don't understand how the setting got changed. Maybe when I enabled frame generation, it jumped down to DLSS on performance mode or something. I don't know, but very weird. It's the non-3D. Yeah, you might want to upgrade the processor then. That's probably going to be your best bet for Warzone 2 performance, especially if you play on like minimum settings. Then it's definitely going to be CPU bound. A 3070 Ti is still a pretty dang good graphics card, so. Yeah, so I would say that our first test was valid. I don't understand unless somehow the setting is still messed up. Because I mean our first test was right in line with what we were expecting for our Timespy result. So super weird that it changed. Makes me want to check the live stream. So yeah, 14 FPS difference, right around 25% difference. How much RAM? Both of them have 16 gigs of RAM, dual channel, but the laptop RAM is 5600. So, okay, I'm pretty sure that. Let's see if we go to frame generation. I'm pretty sure that our test was valid before, but we're gonna try doing. I really want to try doing a 1080p test. All right, so we're doing 1080p DLSS on quality. High quality ray tracing, that's fine. We'll do no frame generation. All right, so this is gonna be a raw test. All right, a raw rendering test at 1080p, which a lot of people are gonna probably want to play QHD or maybe 1080p, and so this would be a good example between these two systems of 1080p performance. And does this game bottleneck or not? Let's find out. So Frosty says, on my desktop, I'm using a Ryzen 9 5900X with a GTX 1060, 1080p, 144 hertz. Weird combo for sure, but I'm actually able to play 130 FPS on low settings of Battlefield 2042. Pretty crazy for a 1060. Yeah, a 1060 surprisingly is a pretty good GPU, at least in as long as you're not being VRAM limited. You're like playing say 1080p or something. Yeah, it's going to be very true. All right. Yeah, surprise! Like a 1060 is probably super cheap GPU still, and even a lot of modern games on low and medium settings at 1080p, it would still probably be able to play them smoothly, probably, which is pretty remarkable. But 78 FPS right now versus 97 FPS. So again, about 25% FPS gain. Even at 1080p, we are not being CPU bound. Not being CPU bound, which is a little surprising. I guess this is really not a CPU-centric game. Maybe if you were inside of like say environments with a lot of zombies. I know there's some areas of Dying Light 2 where there's just like a ton of zombies, but yeah. Yeah, the GTX 1060 is still quite good for a 1080p, but above that resolution, not so much. I would agree with that assessment. Mini games, it's going to do shockingly well. So 100 FPS versus 83 FPS right now. Nice. Okay. So we're going to give 2 wins to the desktop in Dying Light 2 and 1 win to the laptop for the frame generation, which basically boosts the desktop up to 6 and the laptop up to 5. All right. So we are the desktop wins the both raw rasterization tests. But obviously the laptop would win a second frame generation test if we did another one. God of War is going to be interesting. Let's see how God of War handles. We'll do 1080p and QHD for this one. Your motherboard is 4 years old. How long do they last most of the time? They can last a long time. If you're as long as your motherboard doesn't burn out, your motherboard can last 10 years. The main thing about the motherboard is that if you want to upgrade the CPU or the RAM, you're going to have to get a new motherboard. So that's the main advantage or disadvantage there. So we're going to start out at 2560 by 1600. We're going to do DLSS on quality. All right, that looks correct. Our graphics, we want to use the Ultra preset. All right, so graphics, Ultra preset. And display, we're going to go to DLSS on quality. There we go. All of that looks looking correct, I believe. I believe, wait, this is 16 by 10. It needs to be 16 by 10. There we go. All right, so now we're going to find out who wins in God of War. All right, so, pretty substantial difference here. The desktop doing 71 FPS versus 57 FPS. But I got to say our 1% lows at 52 and 64 are both excellent. So we would definitely be able to be playable in either of these games. A very smooth experience. Honestly, kind of hard to tell, visually speaking, that anything is different between these two. So I'm just going to try to center up on the boy here, and we'll get started with our test. I'm going to reset our FPS averages, and we're walking. So we made it to the river. We're going to stop and pause. 62 FPS on the laptop, 77 on the desktop. So the desktop gets another win. We are now at 6 wins for the desktop, 7 wins for the desktop, 5 wins for the laptop. So the desktop is ahead 2 right now. We're going to switch to 1080p resolution and see if that's enough to I guess, slide into the victory position. For the laptop, I don't think it will be, but it might be. To change the resolution in this, it's actually kind of annoying. You have to go and change your native resolution for God of War. So there we go. So we're at 1080p resolution now. And we're going to go down here. Display settings, and there we go, 1080p. Bingo. All right, and under display, we're going to need to make this 16 by 9. There we go. All right, and we're going to do the same thing on here. Display 16 by 9. There we go. All right, so we're going to run back now. So God of War tends to be a very GPU-bound game, and that's really kind of showing through in this test, that even at 1080p, the desktop is maintaining its lead. But I gotta say, the gaming experience on both the desktop and the laptop would be very, very good. Also interesting, 85 FPS right now we're averaging on the desktop, 67 on the laptop. And our 1% lows have been consistently awesome on the desktop as well. That has been very, very good. Let's go ahead and do our run through here. I'm just going to try to position everything to be as close to the same as I can to start this out. And boom, we have started our FPS count. Let's go ahead and run forward. '86 FPS versus 69. Our temperatures are also, of course, better on the desktop, but our 1% lows are also much like the 1% lows and the averages have been better on the desktop consistently. 73-62 on the laptop, 92-78. So that is a 19 FPS gain for the desktop. One of the biggest so far out of any of the games. 19 versus 73. What is that? That's not quite 30%, about 27-ish percent range of performance difference, somewhere in that range. That is impressive. That I mean, it's basically showing the when you don't have frame generation, the desktop is still the way to go. In terms of if you want to get the most possible performance. Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to play Counter-Strike Global Offensive because it is an online game. We are in offline mode. I'm trying to open it on both systems on the same Steam account right now. But this is going to be one of the more CPU-bound games. It's definitely one of the ones I want to test. So that's another win for the desktop. That puts the desktop up to 8 versus 5. So desktop 8 wins, laptop 5 wins. But this game, I'm predicting the laptop's actually going to win. We'll see. I just want to do offline workshop. Oh, it's not going to let me do an offline workshop unless I'm logged in. So we're going to have to quit and we're going to have to go online. And so we're going to have to test this one at a time to be able to see our CSGO performance. Developer console, yes. And now we're going to enable NetGraph. And here we go. So CSGO, of course, being one of the most CPU-bound games when it's in the smoke, I'm predicting the laptop's going to win. That's my prediction right now. But we're going to have to test this one at a time. Wow, the desktop's actually doing really good, 600, 700 FPS. I could be wrong. Whoa, okay, all right. You guys can see that on the right here. So 400 to 500 FPS range here at the initial outset. Very interesting. Okay, checking chat. Frosty7 says, same, I'm thinking of upgrading my 1060 to a 3080 on my desktop eventually, but since I only use 1080p resolution, I'm still not in a hurry since I can still play new games with good frame rates on low. Yeah, 3080 would be a huge upgrade from a 1060, and you'd definitely be able to play QHD games at that point. You don't care much about going above 1080p since you like 24-inch monitors. Yeah, if you enjoy smaller resolution monitors, or smaller size monitors, it doesn't matter as much. Going through the smoke, let's see how low we go. All the way down to 63 FPS in the low there. So definitely super, super dippy. Some of the newer CPUs are able to keep the FPS into like the 90s, like the new i9 13980HX. Going through the smoke again, down into the 60. I think I saw 60 exactly going through that smoke. So pretty interesting. But I gotta say, overall in CS:GO, this desktop is killing it. It is doing a really great job of cranking out the FPS for even this very CPU, focused game. Have I tested Hogwarts yet? I have not tested Hogwarts yet. So 425. All right. 425.44. So 425 is the average to beat for the Legion. We're going to quit the game. And it looks like there's a Counter-Strike update. We're going to have to download the update. Hi, is the RX 6850M XT 12 gig better than the 3070 Ti 8 gig? Are you talking... you're talking about desktops? I mean, in general, if you're going to do QHD gaming, I would highly recommend 12 gigs of VRAM, almost for sure. But yeah, I would in general guess that a 6858 would be a better choice, especially if it has 12 gigs of VRAM. The laptop? Yeah, so 6850M. So that would be like what's in the Strix ROG G15, right? That's a good GPU. I didn't actually test that one specifically. I tested the 6800, I believe. I did a whole review on it if you want to check it out. And I did compare it against the 3070. I haven't compared it against the 3070 Ti. It's obviously a good GPU. It's not bad. I think that the tricky part is really comes down to AMD drivers versus NVIDIA drivers, and if you need NVIDIA in particular. And I say that because, for example, like if you're going to try to do VR, NVIDIA drivers are NVIDIA is just much better overall, in my opinion. Okay, so here we are. We're inside of the game now. We're doing, you can see 300, almost 400 FPS there. It looks like the desktop's going to win, even in CS:GO. It's just interesting. I was expecting us to do a little bit better in CS:GO, but maybe we're more GPU bound than we thought. I guess in a sense, I could give the win to the laptop if the laptop does not get as low for when we go through the smoke. But we'll see. I mean, we'll have to see. If it's pretty close to 60, then it's going to be about, I'm just going to give the win to the desktop. But right now, we're about to go through the smoke right here. Almost 400 FPS. 80, 60, 50, 48. Oh, man. So the desktop still maintained a better 1% low going through the smoke. So that's obviously going to be a pretty substantial difference for anyone that's trying to play CS:GO, going through smokes and stuff. I mean, generally speaking, this game is still going to play great on either laptop or desktop, which is the key, I guess I would probably be thinking about, is that like if they're both going to average way more than the actual refresh rate of the laptop display 98% of the time, it really doesn't matter that much. But you're still going to have a great gaming experience with either system, and the laptop will obviously be more portable, though less upgradable. So trade-offs. Let's see what we get for our overall average. Dun, dun, dun. So it is 322.9. Yeah, so 323 versus 425. About 100 FPS gain on the desktop in CS:GO. That is a huge gain. Actually, bigger gain than I thought it was going to be. Wow. So about a 33% gain in Counter-Strike. Let's go offline, enter offline mode. Let's do Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Next. So we're going to do exclusive full screen, 1600p, RTX, DLSS quality. Graphics is going to be highest. Ray tracing is on ultra. All right. And we're going to do the same exact settings over here. Highest ray tracing on ultra. Oh, no. Are you going to do me like that? You're not going to let me do this offline test? Oh, you are. Okay, good. I was like, he's not going to let me do an offline test in this game. Obviously, you don't need to be online to play the single player game. All right. So, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, we're going to test at QHD and Full HD. And at Full HD, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is definitely more memory sensitive and more CPU sensitive than a lot of games. So we'll see if it makes enough of a difference or not. So right out of the gate, the laptop doing 83 FPS versus 97 FPS on the desktop. Nice gains for the desktop in terms of performance. Our 1% lows are almost exactly the same at 69 FPS. Very interesting. Let me go ahead and refocus. Looks like it needs to be refocused. Interesting results so far. You know, it's incredible the amount of FPS that the laptop is putting out for the amount of wattage. You know, less than 100 watts on the laptop GPU and 237, 232. It's way more wattage on the desktop, obviously. Right now, we're averaging overall 75 FPS on the laptop, 87 on the desktop. So 12 FPS gain. It's a little bit smaller of a gap now than the initial start of the test, which is interesting. Any laptop unboxings soon? I've got a lot of comparison videos coming up with the laptop stuff. We've got, let's see here. I've got the Zephyrus G14 versus MSI Stealth 14. I want to do side-by-side comparisons with that. And then I've got the MSI GE78HX. We got to do the benchmarks on that laptop. It'll be primarily focused around the benchmarks because I did the unboxing technically, but I might do a quick overview of the laptop and then go into the benchmarks just to give make sure everyone has all the context of everything. So those are 2 live streams coming up very soon. We also have, of course, this triple laptop display with the Monduo 16 Pro triple monitors that I'm using in this test today. I went over it at the beginning of the live stream. If you didn't check it out, you can be sure to check it out. But pretty interesting triple monitor setup. I can show it to you again at the end. If you guys want, but it hangs off of your laptop screen and provides triple monitors. It costs $800, and they are high quality, high color gamut displays that are 165 hertz refresh rate, and you can use them for triple monitor gaming. Once you get all the drivers figured out, it's kind of a complex driver situation, which is why I have yet to do the video because I have to troubleshoot a bunch of games and get it to work properly. So those are the next most important things. All right, so 80 FPS on the laptop on average, 95 FPS on the desktop. This is at QHD resolution, which is going to favor the desktop. All right, so we're going to drop it down to 1080p. All right, and we're going to drop this down to 1080p as well. I am tempted. I'm just going to do that. We're just going to go down to 10, I think. Yeah, that's better. All right, and we're going to go here. We're going to go here. We're going to drop the font down to 10 on Riva Tuner real quick for this 1080p test. It's a little easier than trying to reposition the cameras. Okay. I just got to slide this over just a hair, and now we're good. Nice. All right, let's go ahead and run benchmark. So the desktop wins another test. That gives us a 10-5 score so far, with the desktop winning 10 of the 15 total tests that we have measured so far. Checking out chat. Let me refresh our averages. So we have a new set of averages. Oh, wow, it's a lot closer. Less than 10% difference, at least initially there. The desktop still being in the lead, though. The desktop pulling a little bit higher wattage to that CPU, though the clock speed on the laptop is higher. Looks like the laptop CPU and memory speed is not enough to make up the difference here. Maybe if we were testing on low, I don't know, but we'll see. So right now, about a 10 to 12% performance difference at 1080p between these two, which is, it's obviously closing the gap, right, between the desktop and laptop. But yeah. All right. Laz says, does AMD Smart Access make a difference in the RX 6850M XT? I found a good deal, but without Smart Access. That's a great question. Obviously, Smart Access is one of AMD's key features with the AMD Advantage system. I don't know firmly how to answer that question clearly. I'm not sure how you would get a laptop with a 6850M XT without the Smart Access. That's kind of a weird scenario, I guess. I'm a little confused about how that happened. Okay, so looking at our averages right now, it's only about a 10 FPS difference between the laptop and the desktop. I think it's going to get a little bit bigger by the end. Just because of the way that everything's timed right now, kind of FPS kind of spikes up there for a little bit, but still very close result. Only about a 10% difference so far at 1080p. Brian Leos asks, what is the best gaming laptop I can get for $2,000? So my recommendation is to raise your budget another $200 to $300 and get a Legion Pro 7 or Pro 7i or an Omen 17 RTX 4080. Yeah, that's like the cheapest RTX 4080 right now, and sometimes you can even get them close to $2,000 depending on the sale. But without a sale, I think they're like $2,400, $2,500, but I think there's almost always at least a little sale. So it brings them down to like $2,300 right now, maybe even as low as $2,000. But go for that RTX 4080, basically. It's like almost double the performance of the 4070, and you don't have VRAM problems. You have more VRAM with the 4080, and that's going to be totally worth it. Okay, so looking at our averages, 121 FPS at 1080p for the laptop, 130 for the desktop. So the desktop still has enough of a lead, but clearly it's less of a lead now. Only about a 7 or 8% advantage to the desktop at 1080p. That lead shrunk quite a bit as we became more CPU and memory bound. Pretty interesting. Let's move into Hogwarts Legacy if we can. Also, we're going to need to change this back to 14. There we go. I think we might have to do funky things with Hogwarts Legacy is probably not going to let us run unless we go online first. We leave offline and then now we run it. All right. Let's see if it'll let us load the game on both laptops at the same time. I don't know if it's actually going to let us or not. I might have to go back into offline mode again. Frosty7 says, my Legion 7 has 16 gigs of VRAM on the 3080. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, it's enough VRAM for QHD gaming, clearly. So it's like the 3080 was really well balanced in the laptop segment when it came out, I think. And it's still a great GPU overall for QHD gaming. Just some games now with the 3080 laptop, you definitely have to turn it down to like medium or lower settings. Because yeah, VRAM, like Hogwarts, for example, on Ultra with ray tracing, it just doesn't have enough render power to truly play some of the games, you know. So at least super smoothly. So yeah, like when I was doing Hogwarts on my Legion 7 with a 3080, I was only getting like 45, 50 FPS on Ultra with ray tracing, and it just wasn't enough. So I ultimately upgraded to the Blade 18 to play Hogwarts, I guess, but because then I was getting like 150 FPS on the RTX 4090 Blade 18 with frame generation. But if I had needed to use the Legion 7 to play Hogwarts, I would have had to like just turn off ray tracing and go to like medium high settings or something, and then I could still get a playable frame rate above 60 probably pretty easily, but not without tinkering with the settings. Because Hogwarts is an extremely demanding game. Okay, so 2560 by 1600. We need quality for our upscale. Frame rate uncapped. Frame generation enabled. Well, we'll disable frame generation initially here. All right. So that was another win for the desktop. So that puts us at 11-5 overall, right? Everything's going to be on Ultra except textures on low. Ray tracing is going to be enabled. All of that is good. No problems there. So everything is set just fine. We're going to run into some stuttering again, I think, because when we tested this last time, it definitely had some stuttering. So I believe Hogwarts is installed on the desktops. It's on the desktop's HD, so not the SSD. So that's why it kind of took a little while to get everything loaded in. Textures will be on low. Ray tracing is enabled. Weird. Okay, well, it's wanting me to restart the game. Let me just make sure the settings are right before we reset. Interesting. I don't know why it's making me restart the game because it was already enabled, but okay. I'm going to trust that it's not lying to me. Reloading back into Hogwarts again. It just takes a while. All right, so our laptop right now is loaded into Hogsmeade. Let's go ahead and do our running around here initial test. And so this Hogsmeade area of the game is like the most difficult area of the game to run, pretty much. And it usually has a lot of textures and kind of stuttering with all the NPCs. So it's very heavy on your CPU. Notice that we're very CPU bound with only 57, 50, 71, 88% of GPU utilization. And our 1% lows are at 11, 12. It is quite a poor overall gaming experience. I mean, it'll get the job done because the game will run smooth in the other areas of Hogwarts, but it just, and then you'll just have to kind of get a little bit of stuttering as you run through Hogsmeade. But then, like, let's say you settle down in one area and you just kind of like play in this area, it's going to be good FPS with better 1% lows here. But then when you like go run up to the other side of Hogsmeade, it's going to be like a stutter every time it loads in all the textures. So we have done our initial run through to load all the textures in, which we'll have to do that on the desktop here as well. But right now we're getting the ballpark of around 55 FPS, 56 FPS. 12 gig VRAM will be enough for multiple emulators in a game which will use medium VRAM usage. Potentially, depends on how much VRAM and everything is being utilized. I don't know how much emulators use, or if, you know, depending on what settings you have all your emulators set up at too. That makes it's going to make a huge difference. Okay. Looks like Hogwarts crashed. Love that. "12 instances of Android emulators quickly overwhelm your 4 gigs of VRAM." Yeah, I imagine if emulators are actually running off of the NVIDIA graphics card, they're going to use some VRAM for each of them, especially if they're running like 3D-ish games. I'm guessing so. Why would you ever need to run 12 emulators at once? I'm guessing to farm gold in like mobile games or something, or like to run multiple instances of the same mobile game to like, and then you sell the accounts or you sell the premium items you get from the free accounts. That's what I'm guessing you're using it for. I have no idea. LSP, tell us, what are you using 12 emulators for? Definitely running 12 instances of mobile games. Are you farming for farming and then selling your farm stuff for farming purposes? Yeah, that's what I thought. Dude, why are you stopping at 12? You should be like rocking like 25, 24. I mean, at least 24, you know. At least 24 accounts. So, Hogwarts is crashing? Weird. It crashed again, it looks like. Okay, so we're going to stop this, and we're going to try. It might be related to the fact that we're not in offline mode. Let's try going offline, and we'll try one more time. I don't even farm that hard in mobile games. Well, 1 point for the laptop, Don says. Yeah. I mean, I can't discount. I mean, that's pretty funny, but I can't really discount the desktop just for that. Okay, let's see here. All right, about there now for our overlays. That's looking about correct. This is why you're planning on getting the i9HX to brute force that many emulators? Dude, that's not a bad idea. Getting the either going with the i9 or the Ryzen 9 7945HX, and then going with the highest amount of VRAM you can, with like a 4090 or yeah. Okay, let's see if we can load in now. We can load in now. All right, cool. We just needed to be in offline mode. Can I ask LSP what game you're farming in? Like, what is actually worth spending that much time farming? You know. So we don't have frame generation. We don't have frame gen enabled, right? Frame generation is off. Super interesting, though. We're getting more FPS on the laptop in Hogwarts. What is this? Oh, we are so CPU bound that our FPS is just dropping. More than the laptop. We're not as CPU bound as the laptop is. The laptop is less CPU bound. So interesting. Though our 1% low is at 21 right now, which is a bit better on the desktop, by a little bit. Like, the performance is slightly more consistent, but I'm pretty sure the laptop's going to win this based on this initial impression. All right, so we're gonna both face this way, centered up right there. All right, we're gonna be centered up right there. All right. Away we go. $52 on the laptop, $42 on the desktop. Our desktop GPU is cruising at only at 195 watts right now. So that's significantly less wattage than it's supposed to be pulling, and that's just because we are so dang CPU bound with that Ryzen 5 5600. Okay, so we got 47 FPS on the laptop, 20 for our 1% lows, 40 FPS on the desktop, 23 for our 1% lows, and that's without frame generation. Let's flip frame generation on. So the laptop gets another win, 6 versus 11 now. With frame generation enabled, we're going to hop back in here, and we should have significant performance gains. Back for the laptop again. This is difficult. Control 2 characters running through streets. Hey, we arrived at almost the exact same time. Okay, so we're going to set this up again. All right, so we are getting 70 FPS right now on our laptop, 40 FPS on the desktop once again. We're going to get here, we're going to rotate the camera, Beautiful. So our 1% lows are staying about the same on the laptop as they were before, but our average FPS has gone up dramatically. 67 FPS to 30 for a 1% low, and 39.24 for our desktop. So that's 2 wins in Hogwarts for the laptop. That puts us 7 to 11. 7-11. Nice. All right, so Last of Us. And then The Witcher 3. These are our last two games, and then we'll see which one wins in the end. Clearly, there seems to be a noticeable advantage in any of the GPU-bound games. And then the laptop, of course, having the CPU advantage, giving some wins in that extremely CPU-heavy Hogwarts. And then, of course, in some of the frame generation titles, we basically always saw the win go to the laptop in the frame generation titles. So, pretty interesting. All right. I farm in gotcha games. Yeah, I can see that. I was thinking like, what's that game where you run down the hallways with your heroes or whatever, and then they level up and stuff? I was thinking that game might have some people that like to play to win. Is it not? Is it Raid? I can't remember the name of the game. I think it might be called Raid. Okay. Oop. There we go. All right. I probably have the strangest desktop setup for my laptop. One normal one with a 1080p 240 hertz monitor, and another one with an Apple PC CRT from 1994. Why would you have a 1994 monitor? Are you crazy, dude? That is like going to be what, like 360p resolution or something, like super low res. King Dragon says 7950X consumes much less power compared to the 13900K, yet gets close in performance. Colt Serpent says, I just purchased the Asus TUF F15 2023 with the 13700H and RTX 4060. I took your advice and the RTX 4060, and I think you saved my life. That laptop is legit silent and very quiet for my pro audio needs. Cool, man. That's a pretty great laptop for the money, I think. Certainly better than the 2021 version of the TUF 15. So they've made some nice improvements on it. That sounds like a good combo, especially if it's 1080p. Okay, so we're doing QHD. We've got DLSS on quality. All right, and we're going to do ultra settings, except textures are going to be on medium. Okay, so these are the settings that we had before, previously. And here we go. Display. All right, DLSS is set to quality. 2560 by 1600. That's good. And our graphics settings, we need to set all our textures to medium because there is not enough. I think this is still on fastest. Apply. Yes. Okay. Yeah, cool. All right, we have the same settings. We're going to do a new game. New game. I really need to finish playing Last of Us, the video game. It is an amazing video game. I just got distracted, and then I started playing Jedi Survivor. And then I also started playing Yakuza Like a Dragon. That game is hilarious and surprisingly good story. So keep getting distracted with new games. I need to just finish the games I start. Last of Us being one of the most interesting and well-done games that I've ever played. For sure. It's just really, really, really great storytelling and interesting gameplay. CRT is better than LCD, better motion clarity than OLED or LCD. Interesting. In response times and contrast, CRTs were the king before OLED happened. I remember a lot of pro Counter-Strike 1.6 players would play on CRT monitors even after LCDs came out for like many years, including me. I did play on a CRT monitor for a long time. So yeah, I know what you guys mean. But then LCDs transitioned to like 144 hertz, and they got really fast on the response time. And I would definitely play like on a 144 hertz LCD over a 60 hertz CRT for like Twitch type gameplay. But even if the response rate technically may have been slightly slower on the LCD, the smoothness is really important for interpreting motion and firing back at enemies and stuff like that. It goes to 400 hertz or something. Wait, did CRTs go to 400 hertz? I don't. Maybe, yeah, maybe I'm missing something. Interesting. That's pretty insane if that's true. I do remember one of the CS:GO players or Counter-Strike players that was saying they wanted 300 frames per second in Counter-Strike. Maybe they had a high refresh rate CRT or something. Okay, I believe we're ready. We're gonna go ahead and press 9 and press this. Okay, so we are settling in to our average, and wow, the desktop is killing it this round. 86 FPS, 65 FPS for the laptop. Our 1% lows are still quite good, and our overall averages are still very good on both, but the desktop taking a clear victory here, at least in the early outsets. That is going to be 22 FPS, which is going to be basically 33% increase in performance in Last of Us. Showing that even though this desktop has only a 6-core CPU, sometimes desktop architecture and raw power coming in with the ultra high wattage here at 231 watts of power to the GPU. I mean, it's just putting out that FPS like crazy, more than what you would typically think for an RTX, like this desktop versus laptop setup. Like our average FPS difference has been way less than this. So that's definitely a win at QHD Gaming. Let's go ahead and pause this again. Definitely a win for desktop, so that puts the desktop at 12 victories versus 7 victories for the laptop. We are going to go down to 1080p resolution now. It doesn't want me to go down to 1080. There we go. There we go. All right, and we're going to have to also go in here. And we're going to need to lower this down to 10 again. All right. Beautiful. All right, and then inside of here, we're going to go down to 1080. All right, and we need to go back to Reba Tuner. And we're going to set this to 10. Bingo. All right, so now we've got 1080. Let's find out what we get at 1080p. All right, so it looks like even at 1080, we are still very GPU bound. Pulling 30, about 25 to 30 more FPS. 26, 27 more FPS right now at 1080p for the desktop. Our 1% lows, though, are interestingly almost the same. This game is still poorly optimized. Yeah, it is. Also, look at our CPU temps right now on the Ryzen chip on the Legion. It is very spicy temps again. When you're doing these CPU slammed games, the Ryzen chip just gets really spicy. Okay, so we are now only 15 FPS more, 14 FPS more on the desktop. Okay, so wow. All right. So the desktop kind of as expected, I guess, we did get closer and closer to the laptop in terms of as we went along here. Right now that we're into the gameplay though, we are doing 79. I kind of want to refresh it again. Like it was a very small difference inside of the cinematic, but now that we're into the actual gameplay, we're doing 79 versus 100. Though our 1% lows are super good on the laptop. Okay, so that's about a 25% gain for the desktop. A little bit less now than it was at QHD, which was over 30%, but that's 2 wins for the desktop, pulling us from 711 to 713. Now we're going to go ahead and move into The Witcher 3. Cult Serpent says, I could go for the Gigabyte Aorus with a 3070, but I went for the 4000 series purely based on your 3070 versus 4060 video. I think you future-proofed me for good, bro. LOL. Tough costed me 16.99 euros. Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, the 4000 series, I would definitely have got the 4060 over the 3070 if it was my money for sure, just because of frame generation being incorporated in a lot more games in the future. So I wanted to do 1080. We'll start with the 1080p resolution. All right, and that's correct. All right, and we're going to go to display. We're going to go to graphics. We're going to go to Ray Tracing Ultra with DLSS on, oh goodness, quality. All right. So Ray Tracing Ultra, there is no frame gen. If in theory we were to be comparing all these frame gen games, right? And if we only took the frame gen results and not the raw rasterization results, the laptop would technically be more like tied, I guess, because there would be like 3 less wins or maybe even 4 less wins for the desktop. Okay, so we're doing Ray Tracing Ultra, DLSS on quality. We're going to go down to 1080p here initially. I'll hit continue. Continue. All right. Lost Night says, disabling turbo boost saves you up to 20 degrees Celsius with the minimal impact on performance, coming from experience. I'm not sure if that's true for the current generation or not. It very well could be. Okay, so interesting. I believe we have frame generation enabled right now. Let's verify. Frame generation is enabled. All right, so let's see what we get. 104 FPS for the laptop with frame gen. 77, 78 FPS for the desktop. So when you have frame gen enabled, the overall experience is going to be better on the laptop. Very interesting result. You know, because like I said, if you did go with a 4000 series that could enable frame gen on a desktop, it's going to cost you probably more than 1500 unless you go down to like a 4050 or something like that. Then maybe you can get it, or maybe a 4060, maybe. But we'll have to see. But right now, a 3070 is about the most powerful GPU you can get for around 1500, at least in a brand new desktop. So 103 FPS versus 77 FPS with FrameGen. Let's go ahead and take FrameGen out of the picture and see if the desktop is still faster. I think it probably, or if the laptop is going to still be faster. I think the desktop's going to beat it now, but let's find out. Okay, so that's one win for the laptop and one win for the desktop. We were at 7 versus 13. Now we are at 8 versus 14 because the desktop wins this. Let's switch it to QHD resolution and see if that is enough to change anything. We are also going to do a one running test, but we can't do running tests for all 4 of these because it would take too long. Yeah, so we're 8 versus 14 right now. Let's see what we get for QHD resolution with no frame gen. 48 FPS versus 57 FPS. Very interesting. I gotta rotate this a little bit now that we're in QHD, or I guess I can go back in here and make this a little bit bigger. Let's go like that. There we go. And pop over here and make this a little bit bigger again. Okay, so the desktop wins here at QHD by about 8 FPS. 8 FPS is about 16% faster. So not a huge margin. Let's see if turning on FrameGen boosts us enough to win it back. I think it will be. Okay, and now we're doing 70 FPS versus 57. So it's a 1-1 again. So we're 9 wins for the laptop versus 15 wins for the desktop. Let's get some movement into this test. Interesting how long it took the laptop to load in all of those grass textures. Kind of an interesting difference there. Okay, all right. Laptop right now and desktop. I mean, Witcher 3 usually has a lot of stutters when you're loading into new areas, but this is a lot of stuttering going on. The laptop right there, a bit more than you typically would see. I'm just going to run with one of these for right now. Okay. So we're going to have to do this test in like 3 different segments. You know, it's super interesting how much stuttering we're getting right now. I think it's related to our VRAM hitting 6.9. You know, I think FrameGen really jacks with our, look at that, 7.2 gigs on the VRAM usage right here. FrameGen, because we have all our other settings are the same, except FrameGen is enabled, and that is just cranking even more on the VRAM than it is on the 3070s. Unless there's something else going on here, but like we only have 6.4 gigs used over here on the 3070. So I think FrameGen must just crank on that VRAM even more. So to be able to do this, we're going to need to go down in here and is there a texture quality? Can we just set this down to like high? And now that we're on high, can it load everything in or no? Still 7.5 gigs. Interesting. Jeez. All right, let's try low. Let's just see if low will work for us. It's having to reload everything in. Okay. Now it looks like, well, we're still hitting close to that VRAM cap. Jeez. Oh my God. This is the VRAM nightmare. Ah. Now, this is where you probably would have to end up lowering the resolution if you didn't want it to stutter as much. Obviously, it seems to be doing a bit better now. Okay. All right. So now we're at 6.7 gigs of VRAM usage on low. All right. All right. All right. Let's see how that compares when we set low textures over here on the desktop. So low textures literally only took us 500 megabytes down in VRAM usage. I don't know. Maybe it's taking a little while to adjust or something. I don't know. It seems to be going down and down and down. Okay. There we go. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and do a running test. We've got FrameGen enabled on the left. All the settings are the same now, both on low textures. We're going to start this test here as similarly as we can. All right, and we're going to have to adjust a couple times as we go through this. We have reset everything. Oh, man. Come on, we can make it. No, we didn't make it on one, and we totally did on the other. Ah, okay, well, we were still winning on the laptop during that test, so there you go. We definitely still validated that. That's hilarious. Okay, there's your Witcher 3 test. We didn't get the whole thing completed, but it really wasn't going to be the same normal test anyway. Let's do a summary wrap up, right? Cool. So. Let's go ahead and switch over to the face cam. All right, so awesome. Oh, I gotta keep this. I got my mic right here, so I gotta keep this kind of close. Let's do the summary wrap up, and then I'll check chat for any final questions. All right, so the desktop won 15 versus 9 in terms of benchmark battle. I would say in GPU-bound games, where it was strictly GPU-bound, the most performance gain we saw was around 30 to 32%, somewhere in that range. And a couple of the titles like Last of Us was some of the biggest gains we saw. And then the biggest wins for the laptop was in terms of raw CPU performance, and multi-core was a big advantage for the laptop. Had additional cores, additional threads, and single core performance as well, at least theoretical single core performance. The temperatures on the laptop definitely getting very spicy, so maybe a bad CPU paste job could have impacted performance a little bit, but overall, I don't think it did too much. Overall, clearly, both the laptop and the desktop put out enough performance to really give you a great gaming experience if you're after either QHD gaming or full HD gaming, especially because then you don't run into as many VRAM limitations. Another really important thing to touch on is that because of the VRAM limitations, the 1% lows, it tends to stutter. The games tend to stutter a lot when it runs into that VRAM cap, when all the textures fill up that buffer, the VRAM buffer, the VRAM being video memory. When that buffer fills up, it has to empty, and that's what causes those stutters. So you either have to lower your resolution or potentially maybe turn off frame gen. As we found out today, having frame gen enabled demands like another 500 to 1000 megabytes of VRAM, at least in some of the games. So that can affect gameplay performance as well. In terms of, can you get an awesome gaming experience at $1,500 with a gaming laptop or a gaming desktop? You absolutely can, and it's going to be fantastic. It's just at QHD resolutions, you got to expect to fiddle with the settings with the $1,500 graphics cards, because they usually only come with 8 gigs of VRAM, and that is just one of the downsides here. There's not very many options that are going to provide more than 8 gigs of VRAM for your gaming experience. There's going to be maybe some used laptops on the market, or some super big sales on like RTX 3080 laptops from 2 years ago that have like 16 gigs of VRAM. But in general, if you're really after like a flawless QHD experience, you really need to get like 12 or 16 gigs of VRAM, preferably 16, if you really want to have basically no problems loading in textures and having stutter-free experience. So that means either getting an RTX 3080 or an RTX 4080 with 12 gigs of VRAM, or a 4090 this year with 16 gigs of VRAM. Now, at the $1,500 price point, this Legion Pro 5, I think, is a great choice. Another great choice if you want to go to full HD gaming is the Zephyrus G16. I did a whole review live stream of that one. You can find that on my channel in the live feed. It's my most popular video for laptop live streams now, 1.3 million views. It's just freaking insane to me that it got so many views. Anyway, thank you so much for your support. That's all I'm trying to say. Sorry, I don't mean to sound like I'm bragging or anything, but I'm just really excited because I'm excited about success, after all this hard work. Anyway, this whole live stream I think has been very interesting for me, in particular because I thought that the Ryzen 5 5600 CPU in the desktop was going to struggle more in more titles, but it actually did just as good or better than the newer laptop CPU in the vast majority of titles, with the exception being Hogwarts and maybe Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It did technically beat Shadow of the Tomb, like the desktop did win in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, but only by a little bit. And to me, that indicates that the CPU in the laptop really did make a big difference. But then the GPU bound areas of the benchmark kind of pushed the overall average FPS to be higher. But in the CPU bound game areas, the laptop CPU was performing better. But in CSGO, for example, we did have higher lows on the desktop CPU and GPU. So overall, very impressed with the desktop's performance, the temperatures, the build. I know someone in chat had mentioned that they had problems with the LYTE technology as a pre-builder, and I just want to say that like every pre-builder out there is going to have negative reviews out there. As far as I know, LYTE Technology is a valid company that puts out a good product, to the best of my knowledge. And I'm grateful for them to sending me this desktop for me to test. I'll be sending this review unit back to them. It's not a gift or anything, and this was not sponsored by them. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the live stream, there is a link in the description down below that will give you $50 off if you use the coupon code GizmoSlip. Now, the laptop, of course, there's also a link in the description down below as well. And if you use that link, it does help support me, as long as all of these are being used with I guess a browser that allows cookies. And if you do use that and you do use the links, thank you so much for your support. But as always, no pressure whatsoever to buy. I want you to just have a good product and have a great time. Don't just rush out and buy something for the sake of it. That said, this desktop seems like a great overall gaming experience at QHD if you're willing to fiddle with settings. And the laptop, the Legion Pro 5, seems like a really great laptop, minus the CPU temperatures, which in theory actually doesn't ruin the laptop experience. It's just hotter than I would like. And so far it's been that way with every Ryzen laptop I've tested. Now, I do have plans to do a repaste job on this Legion Pro 5 if I can, to see if I can improve the CPU temperatures or not. They may be as good as they can get, or I may make it even worse if I repaste it, if it's already a good job by Lenovo. But I'm anticipating that because we have such a wide variance on our CPU core temps, that we could actually get a better overall paste job and lower the CPU temps a little bit on the Legion laptop. So I think, does that cover everything that we wanted to cover for the test? So add $1,500. And in summary, like the desktop, more raw graphics power with an RTX 3070 desktop GPU, a little bit less, around between about 10 to 30% less in the laptop on average for raw rasterization. But because the RTX 4060 has frame generation, the frame generation games did beat the 3070 when you factor in frame gen in terms of overall smoothness. That said, the 1% lows in general were better on the desktop in the vast majority of the games. So that's definitely a big factor to consider. And it also, I would say that because you're not relying on frame generation in those newer games, you're not as VRAM bottlenecked, because frame generation does ask for more VRAM when you turn it on. So very interesting thing we found out today about that. I did not know that before today's test. So I hope you guys enjoyed the test overall. Let's go ahead and look at some Q&A from the chat before we end the live stream. Okay. Lost Night says, thanks for the stream, GizmoSlipTech. Nice chatting with you guys. Nice. Love a little camaraderie there. Tony G says, I'm super late. What's the verdict so far? Yeah, desktop won by about 27 to 30% in terms of raw power, but depending on the game, you know, a 1080p resolution, it seemed like the difference in performance was more like 15 to 18% on average. I'd have to actually calculate it all up, but it was not as big a gap at 1080p. Again, because we have a faster CPU in the laptop. Again, the other big thing is, are you going to have a great gaming experience on the laptop and the desktop? Yeah. So at $1,500, the fact that you can take the laptop with you anywhere you want to go is awesome. And that's why I would pick the laptop if I was buying between these two. But if you're not going to need to take it to go, then the upgradability of the desktop for future proofing and cheaper upgrades in the future, that's a huge advantage to the desktop as well. So it just depends on what you need in a tech device. Continuing down the chat, Job Christopher says, hi, can you review the Acer Predator Neo 16? That is on the list of laptops I'd really like to review. So yes, I do. Have you tested again the MSI Titan after the upgrades? I do not have the GT77 Titan anymore. Unfortunately, I did send that back to MSI because it was just a review unit. Yeah, so I don't know if they may end up sending it back to me for more testing if I request it, because I would really love to retest it because I'm confident it would score higher FPS now that the drivers have been updated and all that. So at least I'm pretty sure, like 90% certain, but maybe I'm wrong, and it'd be interesting to find out. Don says, really good stream, but one question is the difference between Asus TUF and TUF A. So the TUF A usually has AMD CPUs, I believe, was the primary difference. LSP says, definitely, I would take the laptop around with me. Yeah, so I think it just really comes down to user preference. I think a lot of people think, oh my gosh, desktops are just so much more powerful than laptops, and you're just wasting your money when you buy a laptop. But really, at $1,500 versus $1,500 here, we're seeing more CPU performance on the laptop, and performance is between 18 to 30% slower in raw rasterization performance. When factoring in frame gen, the laptop actually took several wins. So it's an interesting catch-22, and it really depends on your situation on what you should buy. I think both systems has their advantages and their draws, and it really depends on the user. If you need portability, obviously the laptop is probably the route you want to go. If you don't need portability, going with the gaming desktop totally makes sense too. Because again, like 2, 3, 4 years down the line, easy to upgrade just the GPU, or easy to replace just the motherboard if it goes out, versus, you know, when the laptop dies, you can't just replace one part typically. And that's why I usually recommend longer extended warranties for laptops if you're concerned about long-term usability. What's my favorite laptop in 2023 so far? Oh man, these are some good questions, but yeah. Okay, so best laptop is the Blade 18. In terms of my favorite high-end, I did kind of go over this over my top 8 laptops. Best budget, for the best budget high-end would be like the Legion Pro 7i or the Omen 17. The best like mid-range low budget, I think the Zephyrus G16 is still my favorite because it's got the great blend of everything, and it's a full HD display. That's a high quality full HD display, which is just so much. It's so nice to have all that combination in one, to where everything's tuned correctly and it's still very thin and portable, and you're basically getting maximum performance out of the 4060 out of it, and it has Windows Hello and good speakers, and yeah, it's just a good overall complete package for the money. On the super budget end, I like the Acer Nitro 5 the best out of all the ones I tested, but I haven't tested them all yet. I still need to do the Lenovo LOQ and several of the other ones. So, okay. Okie dokie. That's it for the live stream. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I will hopefully have more live streams later this week. I got to do some prep work. And yeah, we should have at least one more live stream by the end of this week. And then hopefully, obviously, more live streams in the near future. So be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell if you don't want to miss out on all the future content. See you in the next one. Brandon, out. Got to reach